Shaun Jim here with N+1 Bikes. I'm here with Jim Whaley. And he's going to talk to you guys about, he's one of my roadie friends. I don't know a lot about road tires. I just know what they all say to get gravel tires, road tires. Jim is a self-proclaimed expert at this. Whatever.
Self-proclaimed. All right. So, anyways, I have been running tubeless tires for probably 50,000 miles, and I started out with tubeless tires on my road bike. I didn't ever.
Well, you got 50,000 miles on your road bike.
Well,
not between a road bike,
between road and like gravel and mountain bikes,
a lot of miles.
But all of them have been tubeless. So, like mountain bikes, it's pretty much 100% tubeless. Everybody runs tubeless on mountain bikes. Gravel bikes.
Yeah, everybody?
Well, what do you think?
Well, I mean, is it everybody?
I would say here we go. The pretty accepted standards is that most people are running tubeless on mountain bike. It's pretty much the same for gravel at this point. All gravel, majority of the gravel wheels are tubeless ready. Almost all the gravel tires are made from the main manufacturers like Maxxis and Continental and Challenge are good brands. They're all tubeless. So I would recommend 100% going tubeless for gravel as well. And then on the road scene,
what's that tire over there? No, over there, like off the screen.
It's kind of similar to these two.
Oh, okay.
Put it on here.
My bad. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. I think road is the one that's the slowest to, as far as like consumers adopting tubeless, but the main manufacturers of wheels now, and then most bike brands are making all their tires or their rims tubeless. So, the main tire brands like Continental and Schwalbe and Pirelli, Vittoria, they're all pretty much treating towards making tubeless tires. So,
well, with that being said, though, what about, so everything's going tubeless, and I've noticed lately everything keeps getting wider and wider. Like we're an NV dealer now, and like one of the big things on the mop, it'll hold a 50 millimeter tire. But everybody in the past, I mean, like the old way, I guess, was the skinnier the tire, the faster it is. Now it's like, what's different? Like, why did that change?
I think what's happened is there's just a lot more science and testing in general between aerodynamics, and what the biggest change in mindset is from thinking that a narrow tire is more aerodynamic and faster, and a wider tire is less aerodynamic. But the testing shows that what you're really going for is rolling resistance. And a wider tire, especially at lower pressures, has a whole lot less rolling resistance, and it makes up any kind of marginal gain that you would have had in aerodynamics. So, like,
how does it have, if it's wider, why is the rolling resistance less?
So the reason that the rolling resistance is less is because the roads that we ride on are, they're not perfect surfaces. They're undulated, or they're kind of just kind of a jacked up surface. So when a tire is narrow, when it's riding across the surface, it's bouncing a lot. And so it's losing a lot of energy. When your tires are wider and lower pressure, they're conforming to the road, and it's just a wider patch that stays on it. So it's a lot less rolling resistance. It's just smoothing out the the abrasions on the road versus like bouncing off of the.
So it'd be different if we had perfect, like not ice, but just perfectly smooth concrete roads, and with no.
If it's perfectly smooth concrete,
you still need a wider tire, probably for traction, right?
There's a couple things for traction and for comfort, but there's been a lot of tests on just smooth glass surface, and it doesn't necessarily give you a huge gain on rolling resistance on wider tires, but you don't lose anything.
But where we ever have that, other than maybe a
velodrome? Yeah. So
do they go skinnier, or?
Actually, for velodromes, I'm not sure what they're running.
But like there's any of them around here anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what they're.
So, all right. So where are you riding now?
So because the trend is definitely wider, and it's across the board as far as gravel and road. So I've recently switched to 30 millimeter tires on my road bikes, and on my gravel bikes, I'm running 45s to 50s, depending on the surface. Now, if there's like a mostly road and like really fast gravel, of course, you may go with something a little bit skinnier and less rolling resistance. But a lot of the gravel races now have all kinds of different surfaces. There'll be single tracked, there'll be chunky gravel, there'll be mud. And so going with tires that have more volume and just a little bit of traction, you know, these Ramblers are really popular.
Ibis, I think, puts on everything as a Rambler.
Yeah, Rambler is like a really good all-around tire. They make a ton of sizes, but this is a 45. Ultimately, I think now if you have an older bike, just try to go with, they have less tire clearance, but go with the widest tire you can fit on there, because when I first started cycling, 25 millimeter was kind of like a wide tire. But now 28 and 30 is a standard, and rims, all of the manufacturers are making their rims wider to go with wider tires.
Well, you have to have that, or you'll get that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, so you lose some of the aerodynamics if your tire is wider than your rim. But at this point, because like we talked about, the rolling resistance being the bigger advantage.
What do we think about cars and street bikes, motorcycles?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, like a lot of people want to get like Ibis is one of the first companies that really come out with, that I've seen, come out with wide mountain bike tires.
Yeah.
And people are worried, well, they're going to be squared off. But if you think about it, and your car and your rim are almost even, the rim and the tire. You talk about like a street bike motorcycle where you're going into corners completely sideways, sometimes 250, 200 miles an hour. Their rims are as wide as the tire, literally.
Yeah.
So that, you don't really need a skinny rim. You really need a wider rim, even on a road bike, right? Is that kind of the same concept?
That's the way that it's treating. Like, so I race in masters races, and when you do, there's people that have been racing for a long time, and you see a lot of different setups because guys have been racing for a long time. They came up on these real narrow rims and real narrow tires. And I saw a setup in St. Louis. A guy had like 23 millimeter tires. They were like this wide. And my bike sitting next to it had 30 millimeter tires. But the new rims, they're made, they're trending wider and wider.
So you really can't put a 23 millimeter tire on a modern rim, likely, or
no. The most of them, the most narrow recommended tire you could put on rims that are probably made in the last 2 or 3 years is a 25. But if you go to rims that are made now, like Zip and Envy, their external is over 30. Their internal is somewhere between 23, 22 and a half, and then some of them are 25.
Like a mountain bike I was riding in 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like Zip 303 Firecrest have a 25 millimeter internal width.
So it's like mountain bike size almost.
And then when you put a 28 millimeter on them, they usually widen out to the width of the rim, so they're around 30. But when you put a 30 on there, they stick out just a little bit further. But it's a lot more comfortable, especially, let's say the rims have a highest recommended PSI. So if you're a rider that's like over 200 pounds, you're going to want to run a wider tire because you have to run low tire pressure. And the bigger tire you have, the more volume it is. It will allow you to run that lower tire pressure if you're a heavier weighted cycle. So 30 millimeter, you can still run 70 PSI, which is really low compared to what the standard has been just even 5 years ago. People were running 100, 120 PSI.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard, just 80 to 100. So now people are, 35, you said, 40?
So in a gravel tire, the tires have a lot more volume, so PSI is around 30s, 20s, 30s, 40. But on road bikes, it's typically somewhere between 60 and 70. If you're a really light rider, you can go under 60.
So almost half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what What tires you got here? Is this a Continental?
So for the road scene, we brought up Continental because it's pretty much it's a kind of a gold standard. GP 5000, a very fast rolling tire, but it also has good puncture resistance and it has good life. Like you'll be able to get several hundred, 1,000 miles out of it. But
So this is a 700 by 30. This is what you're running now. Man, if I would have had some of these, during COVID, 28s where you couldn't find them anywhere. It was like, how do you get a 20? If I had 100,000 28 tires, a year and a half ago, well, I wouldn't be doing this video. I'd probably be retired. But yeah, so this is what should I put on mine? Like I have my Melee I'm building, the NV Melee.
The NV Melee. So this is a
Maybe
perfect
32.
example. An NV Melee is a race bike. Well, it's got race geometry. It's used in the World Tour. It's also, if you just want to have a nice fast bike, you can have it. But it's used as a race bike. And that bike has tire clearance for 35 millimeters. So that just tells you the trend that the industry is going to. And for them, they're having foresight that 30 millimeter might not even be the width that people stick with going forward. There's already tests by notable, race groups and things like that. They're like 32 millimeters are faster than 30s. And 34 millimeters are almost as fast as 36.
Because probably 5 years ago, there was a test. I think it was done over in some other country, but the guy took 3 different tires. It was a 34, a 36, and a 38, and rode the same trail over and over again. Every which way, same bike, same weight, same trail. 3 times each, like 3 different riders. So it was a constant thing. And they did all the analysis. And I think overall, I'm never going to run this size. The biggest tire, what did I say they were? It was a 2.4, 2.6, and a 2.8. The 2.8 had the fastest times.
Right.
But
Yeah,
it was Rudy and Rocky too, so it was weird. Like I don't think I could ever run a 2.8. Well, you can't in any of my bikes I have, but I can't imagine that would be what would they. But the weird thing too, though, is they actually measured. It was a specialized tires they were testing, and they measured It was actually a 2.6 tire. If it would have been a Swabi or a Maxxis, it would have been a 2.6 tire. So 2.6 tires were the fastest, basically, is what it boils down to, which is, and the terrain they were on was rooty. It was kind of like, this side of the country. It wasn't out west. It was more East Coast. So it's kind of the same concept. So maybe mountain biking has started this process. Maybe, I don't know.
It makes sense. A wider tire or more volume tire is going to be able to roll over roots versus bounce on roots or bounce on rocks. The more that you can absorb that energy versus deflect off of it, you're going to have a lower rolling resistance. I think some of the holdup for like going to wider and wider and wider is that at some point there's a tipping point where the weight becomes a negative. So like a 2.8 tire mountain bike is significantly higher than like a cross country 2.4. And so if you're doing a lot of climbing or you're doing a lot of accelerating, that will probably be like a diminishing return on going with the wider.
Yeah, it seemed like the only thing the 2.4 was faster on was because they broke it down in different types of terrain, but the 2.4 was a little bit faster on the. But again, we're specialized tires, so they're a little bit off. So it was a little bit faster on the road sections that connected the trails, basically. What do you have there? It's a Challenger.
These are gravel tires, and
Let me see that guy.
This Challenge that's just the brand itself in general. They make a lot of different tires, but they also make one of the fastest gravel tires. It's kind of a file tread.
But this is a Challenge Strata Pro. Mm-hmm. I think somebody told me to buy these. This is a pretty light.
That's a really light tire, but that's a narrow tire. That's almost like someone who wants to put a winter tire on their road bike or something because it's 30 millimeter.
Oh, okay.
These are very fast. You're not losing much to a road tire, but they're just a lot more durable. I've run these on my road bike during the winter.
I kind of like the tan kind of Italian look.
Yeah, those are hand woven.
Really?
So yeah, handmade, whatever you want to call them. They're Italian.
What's this guy over here?
So this is a Continental Terra trail. So it has tread on it, but based on the rubber compound and just the pattern that they put on there, this is one of the fastest gravel tires on rolling resistance that they make.
Even though it's thick.
Even though it's thick. It's
Terra trail tire, 740
gravel tire.
So why didn't I put this on my Mog?
You could.
Well, I didn't because I thought they were too heavy or something.
No, those are really fast.
Tell me that. Like, why would you not tell me?
Those are good. You could ride them on really like hard pack gravel on a road race kind of gravel race.
So I just wasted the tires on my Mog.
What'd you put on there?
Just told me.
What'd you put on the Mog?
Ramblers. Or no, I put some WTBs on there.
You like to ride trails. You like to take the gravel bike and just do everything with it. So that's not a bad choice to go with something that's a little more.
Let me see that Rambler. That one looks like it has. Oh no, that's not the one. We bought some of these that had like some kind of puncture.
Silk protection.
Yeah, silk protection.
So yeah, they have to be great. I mean, Maxxis makes a lot of different compounds and variants of all their tires, depending on if you want it to be fast, like race day tire, or you want it to be kind of an all arounder, or you just want the ultimate.
It was. I remember it being thick. I was gonna use that one, but it was thick, and I thought it might not be supple enough, so I just kind of backed away from it. But these don't look very. These aren't very big knobbies. These are more of a. This is a faster tire, right?
It is, but these are kind of a secret sauce, like because a lot of people run these on single when there's a lot of single track, and
hard
they'll run
loose over hard.
Mm-hmm. And like the silk, whatever you want to call protection, a lot of people use it on bike packing, but if there's a course you're doing that's extremely chunky with like all kinds of rocks and guys who are racing at the front end of a race will sometimes go with that, because when you're in the front of a race, you don't necessarily get to pick your line. You're at the mercy of your position as far as you're in a tight quarters, and the guy in front of you is going as fast as he can, and you may not have your ability to make a great line, and you're going to hit stuff that you wouldn't necessarily hit if you're just out there riding yourself. So that's why that silk protection isn't just for someone who wants to use bike packing or do some kind of slow riding. It might be a slower tire, technically a little bit slower than.
But it might save you from.
But it's going to save you from getting a flat, and so guys will run it when they're on the pointy ends of.
So what's some? I noticed when I did a gravel race, I've done like maybe 2 or 3 or 4, I don't know, but one I did that was very crowded. It was like just packed. I noticed that most of I was able to stay with groups that were a little bit faster for a little while, and then I just they left me eventually. But I noticed like at the start, everybody was just like freaking out on the turns. Every corner I was passing a bunch of people, and then they would spin past me again, then I could catch them on the neck. And there was a lot. Remember that one in Indiana? There was just turn after turn after turn, and then once it kind of opened up, like everybody just all the fast guys were gone. But I was talking to Laura the other day, and talking about how to. She said she's a really good climber. She makes up time there, and some people do the downhill stuff, but I never hear anybody really talking about
corners.
I feel like it's
I think the gravel scene is unique because it's the most growing scene. When you go to a race or you go to an event, the gravel events are bringing in crowds multiple times any kind of road scene does. And mountain biking racing, is a fraction of participants that you'll get in a gravel scene like Dust Bowl.
So it's mostly road.
Well, that's the thing, is it's unique because it brings people from the road scene and it brings people from the mountain bike scene. A lot of people who get into gravel from the mountain bike scene is they want to ride their bikes year round. And around here, there's a lot of times when the trails are wet and you can't ride. Those guys don't necessarily want to be full on roadie guys.
That's what's weird around here. That's what I've always been confused about. in Kentucky and certain parts of this side of the country. Everywhere else, I go out west, and like people ride if it's, up north or PNW out west, it could be wet and they still ride. If the trails are just sopping wet with mud. I mean, I've ridden in Santa Cruz where there's water running down the trails. But here you do that and you get crucified. It's like off the trails. Like what?
Something to do with the geography. I think out there, if you go out there and you ride in the rain, and you don't go back next week and you don't see that the trail is completely rutted out. If you ride in the mud here, your trails are going to get rutted out. And that's,
will they, or if everybody continues to do it, will it just fill back in?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the trail builders.
I feel like it would just. I mean, I get it. Stay off the jump. I mean, I'm not out there riding on the trails when it's wet, but I feel like if we rode the normal trails, no matter what, it would be fine. Not the like the pump tracks and the jump lines and stuff like that have to be nice, or they don't have to be, but we want nice and smooth. But just the normal trails that have rocks and roots, like I'm pretty certain I'll never get to test it, but everywhere else they ride those trails, and people they get fenders and everything. So
the only real thing that I can say that I've experienced where the trails stay wet for a long time. So if you go out to Turkey Rock and it's been dry for a long time, but they have these low spots, you will see how rutted that trail out is from it being wet and cyclists really having no other option but to go through that. And it is,
or it wasn't built correctly. Like you could put those stones in there.
Yeah, there's some things that when it comes to trail building, I'm not an expert on that. And they've brought in a lot of people to try to come up.
Well, I guess it's like that's a whole different. That's a whole different. Grab that tire over there. I want to see what's up with that.
I don't know if this is a newer tire. I've seen some guys riding it. It's called a Reaver, and it's got knobs on the side, and it's got a really fast tread.
I mean, that's totally very little. I mean, it looks like some kind of like your grandma's old bike or something, but.
It's meant to be
$63 tire, so it must be pretty good.
Yeah, it's meant to be able to have, very fast on smooth surfaces because the center tread has little files.
Yeah, but those side knobs are going to grab.
So then, when you have to turn it over, like if you're getting out in the dirt, and that's almost like a trail side knob. So you get on some single track, and you're going to have a lot more confidence in the turns on that tire.
I just remembered something. I used to ride trials motorcycles, and the knobbies are all really close together. They run very low pressure, but all the knobbies are very close together. Because I'd always ridden I just rode trials for a little while. I was just okay, but the tires. I mean, traction is everything, And I noticed that all the knobbies are very close together. I mean, they're just right beside each other. It kind of reminded me of a Kenda, like one of those Kenda tires or something. What were those called? You call it the Kenda.
Kenda's made a bunch of different brands.
It's like their original. But anyway, knobbies were really close together. But on our motocross bikes, our knobbies were always like real sharp and huge and real far apart, like where you just clean out real easy. Sometimes almost like a paddle wheel. But then the trend started, like a lot of people started putting trials motorcycle tires on their hair scramble bikes, not their motocross bikes, but on their hair scramble bikes. And it was kind of a little trend for a while. Like they were running like 7 PSI with the trials motorcycle tires. So I just wonder if I'm gonna have to try that with mountain bikes. Because here's one: the Aggressor.
Yeah,
the Aggressor kind of looks like a trials motorcycle tire. It's like a lot of knobbies that are close together. I just wonder how that would be as a front and a back.
People love the Aggressor for a rear tire because it's got kind of a fast center tread, but then it brakes really well. So it's low rolling resistance, but then it's still got the knobs on the side. So
it's got a lot of rev around the ground.
Yeah.
Like trending lately, I've noticed like a lot of people are running. Well, Ibis is like putting them on their bikes. The OEM. DHR2, which was originally a rear tire. The knobbies are pretty far apart. It reminds me of like a small version of the motorcycle tires I used to run. But I've put them on the front, and I feel like sometimes They just grab little things.
CHR too is a lot of like downhill enduro type bigger bikes. They definitely put them on the front a lot. I noticed.
Yeah, I've just found like the dissector. Like I'm never in a lack of traction. Like I have some of my friends around, like, you know, I do like the acid guys like on an e-bike, but some of my friends run the Minions, you know, front and rear, and like they just want the big knobbies. But I mean, I've found that the dissector, like dissector Recon or what's not Ardent, I'm trying to think of for the new Forecaster. Those are faster rolling tires, and I run them sometimes. I run dissector, like a dissector front, and sometimes even an aggressor or a Recon rear on my Ripno. And I'm still not at a lack of traction. I don't ever feel like I'm at a lack of traction. We've got these big 29-inch tires.
No, the tires and the Maxxis, which is mainly what we're talking about, they have all these different compounds. I mean, Schwalbe, the same thing. But, I mean, I'm more of a cross-country, so I'm always running the lighter or the faster rolling resistance tires that have less traction. And it's usually because we're always looking at trying to come up with a light tire or like, you know, middle tread is just really fast. But, I mean, even so, like those guys are riding extremely fast on the trails, and they still have a lot of traction.
Yeah. What about the Vittoria? What's it called? Mezcal. Vittoria. Yeah. Vittoria Mezcal. Have you tried that?
It's probably it's going to be comparable to like a Recon race. I think that's kind of the type of tire that is. And then there's the other one that's in the back, and I can't. There's a Barzo.
Barzo's in the front, and the
Mezcal's in the back, so it's almost.
That's what's on my XE right now. I haven't ridden it yet, but that's what's on there.
It's going to be a little bit faster than the Recon race. It's probably kind of like a Aspen or something.
They're a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. You got anything else?
No, I would just say, like, I know that for the road on Tubeless, sometimes people are hesitant because they don't understand the setup, or they don't really know how to maintain them, or they're afraid that when something happens out on the road, they don't know what to do.
Well, I worry about it like squirting all over my. So you're at high pressure.
Yeah, so that's why it's when it first came out, some of the sealant and stuff, they weren't really formulated to handle the high pressure of road tires. The pressure itself pushing the sealant out of the wheel, because on a mountain bike you're running in the teens and the 20s, so it's not as much pressure pushing sealant out, so it's easier to coagulate or do whatever it needs to do to seal the hole. Same thing in gravel, you're running 20 to 30, but in a road bike you're running 60 to 70. So it took a little while to come up with the right formulas or whatever they needed to do to make sure that they could seal properly.
There's still a situation. You use stands, or
I use stands, but
I changed it, or
I think there's different formulas of stands, like endurance, and there's race. There are certain things that but I think being that the rims are wider and the tires are able to come down to the 60s and 70s on pressure, that the sealant just works a whole lot better.
Like, because I did see one get punctured one time. I forget who I was riding with, but I mean, it was just like, it was the fire. It was just shooting everywhere.
So as soon as you hear sealant, if you get a puncture and you're riding and the sealant just starts spraying, the best thing to do is just go ahead and pull over as quick as you can, and need to have a puncture kit. So like Stans makes one, Dyna
darts,
the darts, any of those, to have those things with you. And if it's not sealing, there's different things you can do. You can take the tire, put the hole on the bottom, because then all the sealant will puddle down there, and that's when it'll start to seal. If it doesn't seal that, then just go ahead and stick a plug in it.
Just to get back.
Yeah, and then, if you have a CO2 or you have a pump, just pump it back up. There's very seldom that you're going to have a situation to where it's so catastrophic that you have to put a tube in. I've only had 2 punctures, and they were from hitting a huge pothole that essentially hit the sidewall and gave me a sidewall puncture. Those are difficult to seal with puncture kits, but I mean, outside
tubes on the road are hard too. Like I've had what was it, the Ride and Fag group, that one girl got a flat, and I think we had 3 tubes, and I think we busted every single one of them. because she has like an older bike. And I'm trying
A lot of the times you won't even realize what the tubeless sealant is doing. You're going to be riding and you'll never have known that it sealed punctures because it just is doing its job. Where if you had an inner tube, you may have gotten two or three flats during this ride and you have no clue. Whenever I run through a tire and I take it off, I'm always looking on the inside. There's all these little places where sealant has puddled up or sealed the tire, and I never even knew it.
Yeah, so nice. So you just lost a little bit of air. So I guess if it's a big enough hole, it's all going to come out regardless.
And then you may have to throw a tube in there, but just carry a tube, but carry your little pump and you carry or a CO2 and carry one little puncture kit, and majority of the time you're going to be fine.
Well, that's it. You heard it from Mr. Tire himself, Jim Whaley. Hey, if you guys need anything, just come over to the shop. 502-718-7246 is my phone number. You can call me anytime. We're open 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, 10 to 7, Saturday 10 to 6, and Sunday 11 to 4. Hit us up. Peace out.